Atlanta Dream set the record for the biggest crowd to watch a WNBA game in Georgia history.
Pretty exciting. One of the big reasons fans flock to State Farm Arena is, of course, the Caitlin Clark effect.
If you've been following the Indiana Fever this season, you've witnessed something that can only be described as a basketball miracle. But let's start at the beginning, because trust me, it makes the current success even more incredible. The Fever began this season looking less like a professional basketball team and more like a group that had won a contest to play in the WNBA. They lost their first 5 games in spectacular fashion. It wasn't just that they were losing, they were getting dominated. Fans were leaving games early. Sports writers were already writing off the season, and it seemed like the Fever were destined for another year at the bottom of the standings.
You know, the speed and the quickness, continue to keep her teammates involved, and then also just her growth. It's been great.
Their 1-8 record through the first 9 games wasn't just bad, it was historically bad. We're talking about the kind of start that has general managers updating their resumes and coaches looking at real estate listings in other cities. By the time the Olympic break rolled around, with the Fever sitting at a dismal 11-15 record, even the most optimistic fans were starting to wonder if maybe they should find a new hobby. Watching paint dry suddenly seemed like an exciting alternative to Fever basketball. But then something happened that can only be described as magical, though that word doesn't really do it justice. The Fever didn't just improve, they transformed.
On the drive, behind the back to Boston, extra pass, it's here comes Clark going the other way, Clark going behind the back,
It was like watching a caterpillar turn into a butterfly if that butterfly could suddenly drain three-pointers and make no-look passes that would make Magic Johnson jealous. They won 7 of their next 8 games, a turnaround so dramatic that sports statisticians were checking their spreadsheets for errors. And at the center of this basketball renaissance, a rookie named Caitlin Clark, who was doing things on the court that made seasoned WNBA veterans look like they were playing a different sport entirely. Let's talk about Clark's on-court performance, because these aren't just good numbers. They're the kind of statistics that make you wonder if the scorekeepers have been drinking. She's already shattered the WNBA rookie assist record, breaking it with the casual ease of someone opening a bag of chips. The Fever rookie three-pointer record? She didn't just break it, she obliterated it, rebuilt it, and then broke it again. We're talking about 497 points and 232 assists in her rookie season alone. To put that in perspective, most rookies are just trying to figure out where the team cafeteria is at this point in the season. Clark is out there playing like she's been in the league for a decade. But here's where the story takes a turn that nobody could have predicted. Last night, Clark showed up at Lucas Oil Stadium for a Colts game with her teammate Lexie. Now, normally when WNBA players attend NFL games, they might get a polite round of applause if they're lucky. Maybe their face shows up on the Jumbotron for a second while people wonder who they are. But what happened when Clark walked in was something else entirely. The stadium erupted like somebody had just announced free beer and pizza for life. We're talking about football fans who had paid good money to watch the Colts play, losing their minds over a basketball player. People were climbing over seats, shoving their phones in the air, desperately trying to get a selfie or even just a glimpse of Clark. The social media explosion was so intense that Caitlin Clark was trending higher than the actual football game she was attending. Even the NFL players were trying to get her attention. Let that sink in for a moment. This moment perfectly encapsulates what's happening here, and it's bigger than basketball. Caitlin Clark isn't just a great player. She's becoming a cultural phenomenon, a sports icon who transcends the boundaries of her own sport. The last time we saw something like this in women's sports was probably Mia Hamm in soccer or Serena Williams in tennis. And the numbers back this up in a way that's almost hard to believe. The Indiana Fever, a team that used to struggle to fill seats even when they were giving tickets away, is now seeing packed houses every single game. Remember those old jokes about WNBA attendance? How you could get front row seats by just showing up with a pulse? Clark is making those jokes as outdated as flip phones and dial-up internet. Let's put Clark's impact in perspective for a moment because the history here is important. In the entire history of the WNBA, spanning over 2 decades, there have only been 40 triple-doubles. The first one was recorded by the legendary Cheryl Swoops back in 1999, in an era when many people didn't even know what a triple-double was. Now Clark is adding her name to that exclusive list, but she's doing it in a way that makes it look easy. She's already racked up 102 points on the season, and she's breathing down the necks of some of the greatest players in WNBA history. She's just 19 points away from surpassing Diana Taurasi for second place all time, and only 26 points behind Sabrina Ionescu of the New York Liberty for the top spot. For context, Taurasi is considered one of the greatest players ever to touch a basketball, and Clark is casually approaching her records, like she's picking up milk at the grocery store. As for the Rookie of the Year race, let's be real, there isn't one. Angel Reese has had a solid season, and in any other year we'd be talking about her as a lock for the award. But comparing her rookie campaign to Clark's is like comparing a rowboat to an aircraft carrier. They're both technically boats, but one is in a completely different class entirely. The gap is so wide that some analysts have suggested they might need to create a new award just so other rookies have something to compete for. Now here's where things start to get complicated and frankly a little bit controversial. With all these incredible achievements, you'd think the WNBA would be shouting Clark's name from the rooftops, right? You'd expect them to be plastering her face on every billboard from Indianapolis to Los Angeles, taking out Super Bowl ads, maybe even commissioning a statue or two. But something strange is happening. The league seems almost hesitant to fully embrace her star power, like they're not quite sure what to do with a rookie who's already bigger than the league itself. It's like they've been handed the keys to a Ferrari, and they're afraid to take it out of first gear. And Nike, oh, that's a whole other story that needs unpacking.
A top WNBA pick, Caitlin Clark, her first pro game 10 days away, but even before she makes her pro debut, she has a major Nike deal on the line. And Lara?
Despite signing Clark to a massive 8-year, $28 million deal that includes her own signature shoe, a deal that had sports business analysts falling out of their chairs, they've been surprisingly quiet. No splashy ad campaigns, no major marketing pushes, not even a decent Twitter thread. It's like they're sitting on a gold mine and refusing to dig because they're worried about getting their shovels dirty. This isn't just a missed opportunity. It's a failure of marketing that future business schools will probably study as a cautionary tale. But the story gets even more interesting when we talk about Clark's teammate, Lexie Hull. In a recent game against the Seattle Storm, Hull didn't just have a good game. She went supernova. We're talking 22 points, shooting an almost perfect 6 out of 7 from three-point range, and 8 of 10 overall. The Fever didn't just beat the Storm. They demolished them 92-75, and Hull was a huge reason why. Now this is where we see what makes Clark special off the court. In a league where star players often view their teammates' success with suspicion, worried about sharing the spotlight or losing touches, Clark became Hull's biggest cheerleader.
Yeah, my account will solely be about Lexie if you want to follow. I'm going to change the bio to Lexie Hull fan page, so yeah.
She turned her social media into a Lexie Hull fan account, celebrating her teammates' achievement with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for winning the lottery. Let's dig deeper into this Nike situation because it's honestly baffling. When Nike signed Clark to that massive deal, sports marketing experts were calling it a game changer for women's athletics. We're talking about the kind of contract that usually gets reserved for NBA superstars or football phenoms. The $28 million over 8 years isn't just impressive, it's historic. And the signature shoe? That's the kind of honor that sets an athlete apart as a cultural icon. Yet here we are, months into Clark's rookie season, and Nike's treating her like she's just another athlete in their vast portfolio. Think about it. When Nike signed Zion Williamson, they couldn't wait to plaster his face everywhere. TV commercials, billboards, social media campaigns. You couldn't escape Zion if you tried. They treated him like he was the second coming of Michael Jordan. But with Clark, crickets. It's not just a missed opportunity. It's starting to look like a strategic blunder of epic proportions. Some industry insiders are speculating about what's behind this strange silence. Are they worried about overshadowing their existing WNBA stars? Are they trying to avoid putting too much pressure on a rookie? Or is this just another example of the sports industry not knowing how to market women athletes effectively? Whatever the reason, fans are noticing, and they're not happy. Social media is filled with comments from people asking where the Caitlin Clark commercials are. where the billboard campaigns are, where the shoe teasers are. And it's not just fans who are confused. Other athletes are starting to speak up too. NBA star Damian Lillard recently commented on the situation, saying, "When you've got a talent like Caitlin who's bringing new eyes to the game, you've got to capitalize on that. It's not just good for her, it's good for basketball." Even legends like Charles Barkley have weighed in, with Chuck saying in his typical unfiltered style, "They're messing this up so bad, it's like they're trying to mess it up." But let's shift gears and talk about something that's even more important than marketing deals: the actual impact Clark is having on the court and in the locker room. We've already touched on her friendship with Lexie Hull, but that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to how Clark is changing the team dynamics in Indiana. Veteran players, the kind who've seen rookies come and go and usually take a prove-it approach to newcomers, are singing Clark's praises like they're her personal PR team. Kelsey Mitchell, who's been with the Fever through some pretty dark times, recently said in a post-game interview, "Playing with Caitlin isn't just about her incredible passes or her shooting. It's about how she makes everyone around her better. She's got this way of seeing the game that's just different."
You know, I'm going to read directly from my computer here because Kelsey Mitchell said, "Basketball is a language and you have to get on the same page. Me and Caitlin like to play fast and up-tempo, and I'm always going to align based on how she's playing and how she's going."
And Mitchell isn't exaggerating. The stats back up what the eye test shows. Every player on the Fever is performing better when they're on the court with Clark. Nalissa Smith's shooting percentage has jumped by almost 10 points when she shares the floor with Clark. Victoria Vivians is hitting three-pointers at a career-high rate. Even the bench players are seeing improved numbers across the board. But it's not just about statistics. Clark has brought something to the Fever that can't be measured in numbers: joy. Watch any Fever game now, and you'll see players smiling, laughing, celebrating each other's success. The team looks like they're having fun, something that was notably absent during their early season struggles. This isn't just good basketball. It's entertaining basketball, the kind that makes fans want to come back for more. Speaking of fans, let's talk about what Clark has done for attendance and merchandise sales, because the numbers are staggering. When Clark's Fever jerseys first hit the stores, they didn't just sell well, they broke records. More Caitlin Clark Indiana Fever jerseys were sold in one day than the entire Dallas Cowboys team sold last year. The Cowboys, America's team, one of the most valuable sports franchises in the world, outpaced by a WNBA rookie. If that doesn't tell you something about Clark's star power, I don't know what will. But it's not just jerseys. Ticket sales for Fever games have exploded. They've gone from struggling to fill half the arena to having to add extra seating. Scalpers, who used to couldn't give away WNBA tickets, are now charging premium prices for Fever games. The team has had to hire extra security to handle the crowds that gather hours before games, hoping to catch a glimpse of Clark during warm-ups. And it's not just happening in Indianapolis. When the Fever go on the road, they're playing to packed houses everywhere. Teams that used to struggle to get 5,000 fans for a game are now selling out 20,000-seat arenas when Clark comes to town. The Minnesota Lynx, who've had their share of stars over the years, had to move their game against the Fever to the Target Center because their usual arena couldn't handle the ticket demand. This brings us to another interesting aspect of the Clark phenomenon: her impact on the league's economics. The WNBA has always struggled with the business side of things. Player salaries have been a contentious issue, with many players having to go overseas during the off-season to make a living wage. But Clark is changing the conversation around what WNBA players are worth. When she's bringing in millions in merchandise sales and filling arenas that used to be half empty, it becomes harder for the league to argue that they can't afford to pay players more. Clark herself has become an advocate for better pay and revenue sharing for all players, not just the stars. She's using her platform to push for change, arguing that when the league succeeds, everyone should benefit. This hasn't always made her popular with league executives who've grown comfortable with the status quo. But Clark isn't backing down. In a recent press conference, she said, "This isn't just about me. Every player in this league deserves to be able to focus on basketball without worrying about making ends meet. We're professional athletes, and we should be treated as such." Her stance has earned her respect from veterans around the league. Players who might have been skeptical of a rookie getting so much attention are now some of her biggest supporters. As Seattle Storm star Breanna Stewart put it, "Caitlin gets it. She understands that her success can lift all of us up, That's rare for any player, let alone a rookie. Now let's talk about something that might be Clark's most significant impact, her effect on youth basketball. Since her arrival in the WNBA, participation in girls' basketball programs across the country has skyrocketed. The numbers are astounding. The Amateur Athletic Union, AAU, reports a 40% increase in girls signing up for basketball leagues, with many specifically citing Clark as their inspiration. Basketball camps that used to struggle to fill rosters now have waiting lists hundreds of names long. At a recent youth tournament in Chicago, organizers said they had to turn away teams for the first time in the event's 15-year history. And here's the thing, it's not just girls who are being inspired. Boys are showing up to these events wearing Clark's jersey, practicing her signature step-back three-pointer. As one coach put it, kids don't see her as a great female player. They see her as a great player, period. Local basketball coaches are reporting a phenomenon they're calling the Clark effect. Young players are trying to emulate her style, her work ethic, even her pregame routine. One high school coach in Texas said, "I've got kids showing up 2 hours before practice to work on their shooting, just like they've seen Caitlin do. They're studying her game films like they're preparing for a test." Another coach in California mentioned that requests for jersey number 22, Clark's number, have become so common that they had to hold a lottery for it. But it's not just about participation numbers. Clark is changing the way young players think about the game. Her style of play, the long-range shooting, the flashy passes, the court vision, is inspiring a new generation to think beyond traditional basketball conventions. Kids are learning that it's okay to shoot from near half court if you've put in the work to make those shots. They're learning that sometimes the best play is the one that looks impossible until you make it happen. When we compare Clark to other sports revolutionaries, some interesting parallels emerge. In the NBA, Stephen Curry changed the game with his three-point shooting, making long-range shots a fundamental part of the game rather than a novelty. Clark is having a similar effect on women's basketball, but perhaps a more apt comparison would be to Pete Maravich, the legendary Pistol Pete, who brought showmanship and creativity to basketball at a time when the game was much more rigid and conventional. Like Maravich, Clark plays with a flair that makes basketball more than just a game. She makes it entertainment. But unlike Maravich, who played in an era when his style was often criticized as being too flashy, Clark has arrived at a time when basketball is ready for her brand of creativity. She's not just pushing the boundaries of what's possible in women's basketball, she's erasing those boundaries entirely. Some have compared her impact to that of Billie Jean King in tennis or Megan Rapinoe in soccer, athletes who transcended their sports to become cultural icons. But Clark's revolution is different. While King and Rapinoe became known as much for their advocacy off the court or field as for their athletic achievements, Clark is changing the game primarily through her play. Her advocacy for better pay and conditions for WNBA players is important, but it's her performance on the court that's driving the conversation. Now let's break down her game in detail because the numbers only tell part of the story. When you watch Clark play, what stands out isn't just her scoring or her assists. It's her basketball IQ. She sees plays developing before they happen, like a chess grandmaster thinking several moves ahead. In a recent game against the Chicago Sky, there was a moment that perfectly illustrated this. With just under 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, Clark had the ball at the top of the key. The Sky's defense was focused entirely on her, with 2 defenders playing her tight and a third shading over to help. Most players would have either forced a shot or made the obvious pass to the wing, but Clark saw something nobody else did. Without looking, she fired a no-look pass between her defenders to a cutting Lexie Hull for an easy layup. The pass was so unexpected that even the cameraman was fooled, following the wrong player until the ball magically appeared in Hull's hands. This kind of play isn't just impressive, it's transformative. It changes how teams have to defend, forces coaches to rewrite their playbooks, and inspires teammates to move differently off the ball because they know Clark might find them at any moment. Her shooting range has a similar effect. Because she can reliably hit shots from near half court, defenders have to pick her up as soon as she crosses the timeline. This creates enormous spacing for her teammates, opening up driving lanes and passing angles that simply didn't exist before. But it's not just her offensive game that's revolutionary. Clark's defense, often overlooked amid her scoring highlights, is equally innovative. She's developed a knack for baiting opponents into turnovers by appearing to be out of position, only to spring into passing lanes at the last second. In a game against the Las Vegas Aces, she did this 3 times in the fourth quarter alone, leading to 6 crucial points in a close victory. Her conditioning is another aspect that sets her apart. In an era where load management is becoming increasingly common, Clark plays with a relentless energy that seems to intensify as games go on. In the fourth quarter, when most players are winding down, Clark is often just hitting her stride. She's averaging more points in the fourth quarter than any other period, and her shooting percentages actually improve in the game's final minutes. This stamina isn't just physical, it's mental. Clark's ability to remain focused and make good decisions even when fatigue sets in is remarkable. In a recent overtime game against the Phoenix Mercury, she played all 45 minutes and still had the presence of mind to make a game-winning play in the final seconds. After faking a drive to the basket, she stepped back behind the three-point line, got her defender in the air with a pump fake, and then leaned in to draw the foul while shooting. She calmly sank all 3 free throws to secure the victory. As we wrap up our deep dive into the Caitlin Clark phenomenon, it's clear that what we're witnessing isn't just a great rookie season, it's a cultural shift in sports. Clark isn't just changing how the game is played, she's changing how it's perceived, marketed, and valued. The ripple effects of her impact will be felt for generations to come. But here's the thing, this story is still being written. The challenges Clark faces, from the league's hesitation to fully embrace her star power to Nike's puzzling marketing strategy, are real obstacles. Yet with every game, every highlight reel play, and every packed arena, she's proving that the future of basketball doesn't have to be defined by gender. It can be defined by excellence. We're living in a moment that sports fans will talk about for decades to come. Years from now, people will ask, where were you when Caitlin Clark took over the WNBA? Some will say they were there in person, witnessing history. Others will say they watched it on TV. But the truly lucky ones? They'll be able to say they were part of it, that they supported women's basketball when it was on the cusp of a revolution. And that's where you come in. This isn't just a story we're watching unfold. It's one we can be part of. Whether you're a longtime WNBA fan or someone who's never watched a game, now is the time to get involved. Buy a ticket, watch a game. Support these athletes who are pushing the boundaries of what's possible in sports. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the Caitlin Clark effect, don't just hit like and subscribe, though definitely do that too. Share this video with someone who needs to know about what's happening in the WNBA. Maybe it's your sports-obsessed friend who's never given women's basketball a chance. Maybe it's your daughter who's dreaming of being a professional athlete. Or maybe it's just someone who appreciates greatness, regardless of the form it takes. And hey, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on Caitlin Clark and the future of the WNBA. Have you been to a Fever game this season? Are you one of the lucky ones who managed to snag a Clark jersey before they sold out? Or maybe you've got a young player in your life who's been inspired by her. Share your stories. Let's keep this conversation going. For those of you who want to dive even deeper, I've put together a special playlist of our best WNBA content. You'll find in-depth analysis of game strategies, player profiles, and more discussions about the future of women's basketball. The link is in the description below. And here's a challenge for all of you. Next time the Fever are playing in your city, go to the game. Take your friends, take your family. Be part of this moment in sports history. Trust me, you don't want to be the person who says they missed out on seeing the Caitlin Clark era firsthand. Remember, what we're witnessing isn't just about basketball. It's about breaking barriers, challenging expectations, and showing that greatness knows no gender. Caitlin Clark isn't just a great women's basketball player, she's a great basketball player, period. And she's just getting started. Until next time, keep watching, keep supporting, and keep believing in the power of sports to change the world. Because with players like Caitlin Clark leading the way, the future isn't just bright, it's blindingly brilliant.